first requirement for sobriety to work is rigorous honesty. That's why on page 58, if you will look at it, '58 will seem pretty familiar. What is it entitled, Pippa? How it works. And then how does it work? Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Would somebody pick it up?
Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves.
Honest with themselves first. Okay, go ahead.
There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty.
2, honesty, right? Go ahead.
Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest.
So, what do you need to get sober? Rigorous honesty with yourself. And we do that when we stop believing our description of ourselves and look at our behavior. Our behavior tells us the truth. Our description is some wishful thinking we have about ourselves. And if I will take the risk of describing my behavior and believing that, then I have made a good beginning in sanity and spirituality both. They both require rigorous honesty. Sanity is just bringing my mind back into touch with reality. Honesty is the same thing. And they both require that I be rigorously honest with myself. And so that's a kind of part of what we need to look at. The other thing about this, as I said, we came to believe why do I underline that?
It's not in.
Exactly. We do not say came to believe in. So what is it saying then when you have a sentence that begins with came to believe that? What is it introducing?
It is happened. Well, came to believe that it has happened. There's an entity.
It's a proposition, isn't it?
Yeah,
We came to believe in a proposition. We came to believe in the proposition. What is the proposition? That a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Just, okay, it doesn't say, I got faith in God. It doesn't mean, it says, came to believe that Crest will prevent cavities. It's not a statement of supernatural belief in a tube of Crest, nor do I worship Crest. I just came to believe that Crest could prevent cavities. Came to believe that is a very important thing. And yet people read, came to believe in a power greater than ourselves. That's not what the says. Because you can't just, we got a really good lesson about this a couple of years ago when we were talking about this, and some of the people are complaining about the fact that in the second or third week they were being expected to have come to faith. And there was a guy sitting down the back, and he stuck up his hand and he said, I am so relieved. I spent 12 years in a Greek Orthodox monastery praying for faith and didn't get it. And I'm getting the impression that in 3 weeks in treatment, I'm supposed to have gotten faith. And he said, so I'm really relieved that it is not something as stupid as that is being expected. So, anybody who's been immersed in any form of religious training would, just throw up at the idea that somehow in the third week of something, you're going to have the gift of faith. I mean, it's really asinine. So, and this is not an asinine thing. This came to believe in a proposition that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And this now brings me to the second step with regard to cars. Please, stay with me. Because, as I said, when we come to something like, and you see the word belief, people's brains fall out. So I'm going to use a parallel that has nothing to do with religion or faith or spirituality or anything else. In 1976, I bought a Saab. And if you had a Saab in 1976, you had better get 2 of them because one of them was in the shop all the time. And in fact, they used to say, if you have a Saab, you have a Saab story. And we all had Saab stories. And in those days, we bought the Saabs from Hubacker Cadillac Saab in Sacramento on Howe Avenue at Fair Oaks. I think Hubacker's still there, isn't it? And on any given morning, you would see 40 Saabs lined up. There were only about 60 altogether in the whole area. But there'd be 40 of them lined up for the service department, and there'd be like 12 Cadillacs. And we all kind of had a community commiserating with each other, the Saab owners. And around about that time, when I had the thing, about 6 months, AAA told me I was overutilizing road service with a 6-month-old car. And I'd been towed off the freeway 3 times. They had been out to the house innumerable times. But around about that same time, my next-door neighbor moved, and a guy moved in who taught at City College in Sacramento, and he had exactly the same Saab, same model, color, everything. And so the first Saturday we're out doing the lawn, he comes over and he says, so how do you like your Saab? And I, fine, great brakes or something. And he said, it's driving you nuts, isn't it? He said, I've seen you at Hubacker. And he said, and I said, yeah, is yours too? He said, mine was driving me to suicide. He said, I was so pissed off with this car. And he said, a guy I met in the line of Saab owners, he said, who had been a former student of his, called him one day and said, hey, Professor so-and-so, I have an answer to your Saab problem. And it was a Swedish mechanic out in the north area in Sacramento. It's the Swedish guy, Sven, believe it or not. And I said, so what did you do? And he said, well, what do you think I did? I took my car to Sven. And what? He said, it's a dream. It's wonderful. Remember he said how good it was when you test drove it and how nicely it handled? He said, that's the way it is all the time now. I said, really? He said, yeah. This guy knows Swedish cars. And So that's step 2, right? You get it? Why is it step 2? Came to believe that a mechanic in the north area could remedy my sob, right? That's all step 2 is, guys. Don't go making some stupid third-rate religion out of it. And how did I come to believe that Sven could fix my car? From someone else told me, right? That's how we come to believe that something will work, right? Did I believe in Sven? I had never met him.
No, but you believed in your next door neighbor.
Right. I came to believe that Sven could fix my car. So I went into the house that day and I very firmly told my wife that I've decided to take my car to Sven. That sound familiar? What's step 3?
I don't know, I'm new here.
Well, it's up there. Made a decision, right, to take the rest of the steps is really what it is. So, but here's the thing that's real important. Here's the thing that's real important and where we can really get off track. After I made that decision to take my car to Sven, and I went out to my car, was it running better? Huh?
Not yet.
It was just a decision.
The mechanic hadn't even worked on it yet, right?
Right.
Yet you have all kinds of people expecting change to happen in steps 2 and 3, and they haven't done shit yet. Right? They have a problem. They've recognized their problem. Their sob is breaking their alcoholism is breaking their heart, right? They have heard from somebody else who had the same problem that they found a solution, right? That's the second step. The third step, they made a decision to turn their will and their life over to the care of God as they understand it. I'd made a decision to take my car to Sven out in the north area. I have not done anything yet. And yet, people come into treatment sometimes and they've been out for like a year or 2 years or 6 months or whatever, and they've never gone beyond step 3. And they wonder why nothing changed. Well, go out to my car at the curb after I've heard that another guy got his fixed, and I've decided to take my car to his, so that ought to fix my car right there, you know. So it's just, that's what I'm saying. So often in treatment, our brains seem to fall out. And we're expecting shit to happen without doing anything. So the first 3 steps, you haven't done anything. You've recognized a problem, you've heard somebody else has found a solution, and you've decided to take their solution. That's all you've done yet. So I think this is where, if we try to keep this program simple, this is a program for intelligent people. It does not call on you to get all religious and all worked up in some sort of religious fervor before you experience anything. the healthiest, and I know this is going to surprise some people, the healthiest way you could approach this program would be with a nice, open-minded skepticism that says, I've heard they found a solution, I will do what they say they did, and I'll see if I get the same effect. I'll be scientific about it, because scientific means that something can be replicated, right? It can be repeated by someone else, right? So you have peer review when people say they have discovered something. Okay, doctor, give me your lab notes. I will duplicate your experiment and see if I get the same result. That's what is the healthiest approach to this program. The people that start off and try to make it into something where they talk themselves into believing, what happens to them down the road is they never know whether something actually happened or they talk themselves into it. They are forever in confusion. They're afraid they may have talked themselves into it. And then you get them working with sponsees, and they have so little faith that something real will happen themselves that they have their sponsees doing the same thing. And it's making a kind of a pig's breakfast out of what is a spiritual path. A spiritual path, you set out with a certain degree of open-minded skepticism and see if something happens. You duplicate the experiment and see if you get the result they say they got. I took my car to Sven. I was not going down, worshiping Sven, saying, oh, I believe, I believe, I believe. It had nothing to do with it. Bring my car to him, let him work on it. I get the car back. The guy was right. It was a great car afterwards. But I didn't know that until I got the car back and drove it for the next couple of years and realized this is a great little car. But so it's the same kind of thing, and somebody did me the great favor, this agnostic among them, did me the great favor of knocking that phony religious baloney out of me and having me approach this as a spiritual path. People have been walking spiritual paths since thousands of years before Christ, thousands of years before Buddha. Buddha even talks about the ancients who walked spiritual paths and had transformations. He talks about that. He lived 2,500 years ago, and he's talking about the ancients. And so walking a spiritual path of steps is what this program is about. And that brings me then to page 26. I'm going to sort of summarize part of it. Have some of you read this? Yeah, some hands. Okay. Page 26 tells the story about this guy who, an American with a lot of money, obviously, decided he was an alcoholic. He was very successful, but he was an alcoholic, and he would go to any length to get over his alcoholism. This is before Alcoholics Anonymous. This is like in the early 30s, before 1935. And he decided, there's two people that in those days, if you wanted the best, you went to either Freud or Jung. They jointly discovered psychoanalysis and psychotherapy as we know it today. So Jung was in Switzerland, Freud was in Vienna, and he went to Jung in Switzerland, and he spent a year in psychoanalysis with Jung. And psychoanalysis is not like going once a week to a therapist. It's like 5 or 6 days a week on the couch, but the only person who can afford it is Woody Allen. You know, I mean, and today.